I don't hate the Pathless, I just feel it's done stuff we've seen in pretty much every other immersive indie game at this point. And yeah, a game doesn't have to be wholly original to be good, otherwise we would just very rarely get good new games. But I still think they could have done just a little bit more with this game. This isn't a review, just some quick impressions I'd like to get off my chest. You hardly need me to tell you this, but Pathless is heavily inspired by Shadow of the Colossus. There's rolling green hills that give you a nice shot of tranquility between the puzzles and giant boss battles you'll need to overcome to beat the game. Getting through the environment is some of the most fun you'll have in Pathless. To keep your sprint meter going, you'll need to constantly be hitting red targets littered throughout the land, and these little bursts of speed feel super good. At times, I'd just let the flow take over, dashing up and through bridges before landing in a new forest clearing I hadn't seen before. Pathless falters in several places. It doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's got more systematic meat on its bones than the company's last game, Abzu, but it doesn't have enough moving parts of variety to compete with other huge open-world titles mechanically, and it doesn't have enough beauty to be up to snuff with Abzu itself, leaving it in an unfortunate middle ground that's simultaneously not diverse enough to sustain all of its length, or outright gorgeous enough to be an enriching experience piece. Puzzles always consist of targets, mirrors, and weights. I was surprised by all of the different things they were able to create with these objects, but it didn't give me the absolute bending and mysterious challenges that The Witness did. In fairness, they do manage to get a lot of mileage out of the small pool of mechanics they're working with, but it peters out before the game runs its course. You're not going to see a new obstacle or temple that's completely unfamiliar to you. Once you've seen a couple, the rest don't really diverge much from that. The bosses range from fun chase scenes to irritating stealth set pieces. One of them had me running from its flames into an abandoned castle. At times, it'd be unclear how to proceed. The flames would slap me over the head and push my character back, preventing me from getting through a doorway. This happened several times before I could get the timing right. Perhaps it's just my lack of skill, but it was definitely one of those moments where the indie game budget stood out. Another aspect it falters in is the story, and I'm struggling to find where to begin with how to criticize it. Imagine you were trying to debate someone who said that Wyoming wasn't real. You wouldn't really know where to start. You'd feel overwhelmed with how to approach that because there's so many places you can start. You can go there. There's photographs and videos. Such is the case with Pathless's story. I'll start here. The instant I see the word darkness, I immediately think of 40 other games with uninteresting stories. Yes, for the most part you aren't going to be seeing dialogue, you'll be running around killing bosses and solving puzzles instead, but that just makes the few lines of dialogue in the game that much more important to nail. Why do we have to hear about an evil Shadow King like we've seen so many times before? Not just in other video games, but in everything. If it wasn't for the game's clean and soothing art style, I wouldn't have been able to get knee-deep into this thing immersion-wise, even if it's somewhat simplistic. Don't get me wrong, the game's pretty, but I didn't get that same feeling I got the first time I saw a giant swirling collection of fish and colored plant life in the studio's last game. The ocean setting allowed for more varied and vertical beauty we just don't see here. It'd be wrong for me to end this video without touching on some of the stuff I enjoyed with Pathless. The sheer size of this thing is impressive. It's definitely taking advantage of that next-gen and PC hardware here more than anywhere else. The music brings me into the world the same way Arise and Journey did. The transversal, while not as diverse and robust as something like Mario Odyssey, is super fun to play with, and you won't be missing fast travel in the slightest. If you enjoy indie games, I tend to talk about them on the channel a lot. Like the video if you think I did a good job, and subscribe if you want to see more.